Was I wrong for putting his bags on the curb and changing the locks the second I saw her car pulling away? I mean, I caught my fiancé, the man I was supposed to marry in 3 months, walking out of our house after an illicit meeting with his ex-girlfriend. He was whispering, "I love you," into the phone while holding the keys to the future we built. Tell me, honestly, if you would have done the same thing, because some days I feel like the villain, and other days I feel like a survivor who finally stood up for myself. I still replay that moment over and over. That sick, gut-wrenching realization that my entire world was built on a lie, and the only thing I could do was tear it all down, brick by painful brick. It was devastating, but I had to do it. To understand the sheer magnitude of the betrayal, you have to know where we started, how high we flew before the fall. I met Alex 5 years ago at a friend's awful, overcrowded birthday party. He was the quiet guy nursing a cheap beer in the corner, and I was the one trying to make awkward small talk with everyone. We just clicked. It wasn't fireworks or a sudden bolt of lightning, but a comfortable, deep connection that felt like coming home. We talked for hours that night, sharing our ridiculous life goals, our fears, and our complicated family histories. I learned that he was an engineer, ambitious and hardworking, and that he had been through a tough breakup about a year before. He only briefly mentioned his ex, Sarah, saying it was a messy and to a long-term relationship, and he was still healing. I thought nothing of it at the time. Who hasn't got baggage? I certainly did. Over the next year, our relationship blossomed into this beautiful, strong partnership. We weren't just lovers. We were best friends and a team. We tackled apartment hunting, job changes, and even a disastrous attempt at building flat-pack furniture together. It was during that year that the idea of us becoming permanent truly solidified in my mind. He was reliable, kind, and always made me feel safe. He was the calm to my storm, the anchor I never knew I needed. The real shift came when we decided to buy a house. This wasn't just a house. This was my house. I inherited a substantial sum of money from my grandmother, a woman who had taught me the value of independence and never relying on a man for financial security. She had always insisted that if I bought property, it should be in my name first for protection. Alex, to his credit, never argued. He was happy for me and proud of my financial acumen. So, the house, a charming 1920s bungalow with a sprawling backyard and a giant oak tree, was purchased solely in my name. I paid the down payment, and my inheritance covered a significant portion of the mortgage, making the monthly payments incredibly manageable. Alex insisted on paying me a fixed, generous amount every month for his share of the household expenses, and he poured his own blood, sweat, and tears into renovations. We spent every weekend for 6 months stripping wallpaper, painting walls, and arguing over where the television should go. It was domestic bliss, the kind you see in cheesy rom-coms, but it was real and it was ours, or so I believed. He bought all the major appliances, installed the fancy smart thermostat, and built the bookshelves that lined our living room. It was truly our home, regardless of whose name was on the deed. When he proposed to me in the finished backyard under that big oak tree, with a simple, elegant ring, I felt like the luckiest woman alive. We set the wedding date for the late spring, just 3 months away from that fateful moment I started the story with. Everything was perfect, or perhaps perfectly orchestrated. The first crack in the facade was subtle, almost invisible. It started about 6 months after we got engaged. Alex became increasingly protective of his phone. Now, I'm not a snooper. I trust my partners. But it went from casually leaving his phone on the counter to suddenly taking it with him everywhere, even to the mailbox. I tried to joke about it. "Did you get a secret job offer you're not telling me about?" He'd just laugh it off a little too quickly and say, "Just work stuff, babe. Nothing interesting." Then came the late nights. He's an engineer and sometimes projects run long, I get that. But the 2-hour team meetings that bled into 3 hours, followed by a vague text like "rough night, heading home now," started becoming a 2 or 3 time a week occurrence. His explanations were always just detailed enough to seem plausible: a broken pipe on site, a last-minute structural review, or a necessary all-hands meeting to meet a tight deadline. But the man who used to call me 5 times a day just to say hi was now barely texting. The intimacy, both emotional and physical, had cooled to a lukewarm state. When I asked him what was wrong, if we were okay, he turned it around on me, accusing me of being insecure or stressed about the wedding. He was an expert in emotional deflection, and I, desperate to believe the man I loved, would apologize and promise to trust him more. It's amazing what we will rationalize away when the truth is too painful to face. I kept telling myself, it's the wedding stress. It's the promotion he's going for. It will go back to normal after the big day. I was wrong. It wasn't the wedding, it was the woman. I first saw Sarah's name pop up again, innocently enough. We were looking through old photos on his computer, and I accidentally clicked on a folder labeled Old Projects. Inside, beneath a dozen photos of schematics and blueprints, were hundreds of pictures of him and Sarah. They looked so young, so in love. I knew they dated for a long time, but seeing the sheer volume of their history hit me harder than I expected. They had been inseparable. I remember looking at a photo of them on a hike, both beaming and feeling a sharp pang of jealousy. Not because of the past, but because I realized he had a whole history, an entire life story I was just a footnote in, a history that still felt raw. I asked him about it, and he immediately got defensive. It's just old stuff. Why are you digging through my files? I explained it was an accident, and he reluctantly apologized, deleting the folder right there and then. She's ancient history, he insisted, holding my face in his hands. You are my future. Stop worrying about ghosts. And I, fool that I was, believed him. The ghost, however, wasn't ancient. It was very much alive and living in a nearby city. The late nights continued, and my anxiety turned into a low, buzzing suspicion I couldn't ignore. I started tracking his office hours with his work friends on social media. One Friday night, he told me he was stuck at the site until 10 p.m. I happened to see a photo posted on Instagram by his colleague at 8:30 p.m. The caption read, "Friday night beers. So glad the week is over." Alex wasn't in the picture, but his usual parking spot was clearly visible in the background, empty. The lie wasn't just about time, it was about location. My heart started thumping like a drum against my ribs. Where was he? I didn't confront him that night. I was too terrified of his reaction, and even more terrified of the answer. I decided I needed undeniable proof. I didn't want him to be able to talk his way out of this one, to flip the script and make me the crazy, distrustful fiancé. The proof came 2 weeks later, and it was so much worse than I could have imagined. I had been feeling unwell and took a day off work. I hadn't told Alex because he had a major deadline that day, requiring him to be in the office by 7 a.m. I was home, sitting on the couch, wrapped in a blanket, watching mindless television, when I heard a key in the back door. Not the front door, which is where he always came in, but the seldom-used back door that leads straight into the laundry room. My stomach instantly dropped. I heard muffled voices, a feminine laugh, and the sound of the door closing softly. I was paralyzed for a second, my mind racing. A plumber? No, I would know. A delivery? No, they used the front. I slowly crept toward the laundry room door, my ears straining to hear the voices. They weren't fighting. They were whispering, giggling, the sound of easy familiarity. I pushed the door open just a crack and saw them. Alex and Sarah. They were standing close, too close. Sarah had her hand resting casually on his chest, and Alex was holding her wrist, gazing at her with an intensity one hadn't seen directed at me in months. They weren't doing anything overtly sexual, but the energy, the sickening, charged intimacy between them, was 1,000 times worse than seeing them kiss. It was the familiarity, the comfort, the secret that they shared in my house. Alex was holding a packed duffel bag, clearly retrieved from one of the guest rooms he'd claimed was full of work equipment. Sarah was speaking, and I caught a snippet of her voice, laced with regret and longing. I know it's hard, but just a few more weeks, okay? We can finally stop hiding. Alex pulled her into a brief, tight hug and said, his voice raw with emotion, I know. I love you so much, baby. I promise I'm ending this. Just be patient. He kissed her forehead, a lingering, tender gesture he hadn't afforded me in weeks. They didn't see me. They quickly separated, and Alex ushered her out the back door. I heard the engine of her distinctive old blue sedan start up and pull away. The entire encounter lasted maybe 3 minutes, but it shattered the foundation of my life into a million sharp shards. He was packed, he was leaving me, and he was planning to tell me, but not before one final, secret rendezvous in the house I paid for. The silence after the car left was deafening. The air was thick with their lingering scent, the scent of betrayal. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. An eerie, cold calm washed over me, the kind of stillness before a hurricane hits. I walked over to the mudroom where Alex had dropped his keys on a hook. I took them off, walked straight to the lockbox I kept for the spare keys, grabbed the spare set of house and car keys, and dropped them all into a heavy-duty Ziploc bag. Then I grabbed his duffel bag, which was still sitting by the door. I walked through the house, fueled by pure, righteous fury, collecting every single one of his personal belongings that wasn't screwed down, his favorite jacket, his fancy noise-canceling headphones, the ridiculous superhero slippers he loved, his travel kit from the bathroom. I emptied his bedside drawer of his charging cables and his watch collection. I even grabbed the half-eaten bag of his favorite chips from the pantry. Everything that made him a resident of my home went into a dozen heavy-duty trash bags. I hauled them all out one by one and dumped them unceremoniously on the edge of the curb, right next to the recycling bin. He was trash, and his things belonged with the trash. I looked at the mountain of black bags and felt a strange mixture of adrenaline and nausea. I immediately called a mobile locksmith I had used before. I was calm, almost robotically so. I need all the locks on my house changed right now. ASAP. Emergency, I told him. He was hesitant, but I insisted, offering to pay triple his standard rate. He agreed to be there in an hour. While I waited, I didn't stop. I went to the guest bedroom closet where his formal attire was kept. I took his tuxedo, the one he was supposed to wear on our wedding day, and sliced it up with a pair of kitchen scissors. The silky lapels, the stiff collar, I shredded them into ribbons. It was a purely cathartic, visceral act of rage, and it felt incredible. Next, I went to my laptop. I logged into our joint banking account, which we used for shared household bills, and transferred every single penny, including his last monthly contribution, into my personal savings account. The account was in both our names, but the funds were meant for our future, and as far as I was concerned, our future was officially terminated. When the locksmith arrived, I explained nothing. I just pointed to the doors, watched him work, and signed the invoice. I put the new, shiny set of keys on my keyring and tested every lock. The house was now secure, sealed off from the parasite who had been draining my life and love. The whole process took less than 3 hours. When I was finally done, I stood in the middle of my silent, pristine living room and finally allowed myself to shatter. I fell to my knees and cried the most guttural, agonizing tears of my life. The betrayal wasn't just sexual or romantic. It was a betrayal of my trust, my future, my financial independence, and my very ability to judge character. He didn't just cheat. He moved his mistress into the secret, unguarded corners of my life. He used my safe place as his illicit meeting spot. So that's the situation I was in, engaged, 3 months from the wedding, standing alone in the house I owned, staring at an empty back door where my fiancé and his ex-girlfriend had just conspired against me. The house was locked, his stuff was on the curb, and his key was in a Ziploc bag. I had not sent a single text, made a single phone call to him, or left a single message. I was completely silent, waiting for him to come home from his major deadline. Before I tell you what happened next, the confrontation, the awful, manipulative conversation that followed, I want you to pause and comment below what you would have done in my shoes. Would you have confronted him in person, or did I handle the physical part of the separation correctly by preemptively kicking him out? I had to make a choice, be the bigger person or protect myself ruthlessly. I chose the latter, but I still wonder if I should have just walked away quietly instead of causing a scene. Let me know what you think. When Alex finally drove up around 6:30 p.m., I was sitting on the front porch swing, sipping a cup of herbal tea, trying to project an aura of unshakable calm, even though my hands were shaking. He pulled into the driveway, got out of the car, and immediately saw the mountain of black trash bags and the duffel bag on the curb. His entire demeanor shifted from tired relief to instant, icy panic. He looked from the bags to the house and then finally to me. He started walking toward me, a confused, bewildered look on his face. "Babe, what is all this? Did something happen?" he asked, trying to sound concerned, but I could hear the tremor of fear in his voice. I took a slow sip of my tea, savoring the silence before the storm. I kept my gaze steady, meeting his eyes without flinching. "Your deadline must have ended early, Alex," I said, my voice flat and devoid of any emotion. He came closer, his eyes darting between the bags and my face. "What are you talking about? What is going on?" He tried to reach for my hand, but I pulled it away instantly. "Don't touch me," I commanded, the words cutting through the air like a razor. He flinched. "I had a revelation today, Alex," I continued, my voice still dangerously calm. "I realized I don't need a man who needs a major deadline at the office to sneak his ex into my house through the back door and pack his bags in the guest room. I realized I don't need a fiancé who whispers 'I love you' to another woman while planning my future with me. I realized I don't need a key to my house in the hands of a traitor." His face went ashen. All the color drained out of him. The excuses, the bravado, the deflection, all of it vanished. He was caught, exposed, and vulnerable. How did you know?" he stammered, which was the final, devastating admission I needed. He didn't deny it. He only questioned how he was discovered. "I was homesick today," I explained, gesturing toward the back of the house. "I saw Sarah's blue sedan pull away from the back gate, and I heard her tell you she couldn't wait a few more weeks until you finally ended this," I said, pointing between us. "So, I ended it for you, Alex. Your bags are on the curb, your keys are in the trash, and your access to this house is permanently terminated. I changed all the locks an hour ago." What followed was a masterclass in manipulation. He didn't apologize to me. He tried to save himself. He dropped to his knees, begging, pleading, crying, but not for my pain. He was crying for his lost life of comfort. "Please, no, you don't understand. It was a mistake. It was just a moment of weakness. She came on strong. I was confused. The wedding stress. Please, I love you, not her, I swear," he sobbed. He tried to blame Sarah, calling her crazy and desperate. He tried to blame the wedding planning, saying it made him feel pressured. He tried to blame me, saying I was distant and cold lately. I just watched him, feeling nothing but cold disgust. I let him grovel for a full 5 minutes, absorbing the sheer patheticness of his performance. When he finally ran out of breath, I leaned forward, looking him straight in the eye. "Stop it, Alex," I said softly. The duffel bag was packed. "You said, 'I love you.' You plan to leave me, not today, not tomorrow, but in a few more weeks. You were using me and my house as your safe harbor while you figured out which woman you preferred. This house, Alex, is mine. The down payment, the mortgage, it's all mine. The appliances you bought, the bookshelves you built, they are fixtures. They belong to the house now. You have absolutely zero legal claim on this property, and I know that because I consulted a lawyer when we bought it just in case. You have nothing here but your trash bags." That's when the anger boiled over, and he switched tactics. He stood up, towering over me. "This is insane. We're engaged. I helped pay the bills. You can't just throw me out. You're being hysterical." "I'll call the police," he shouted, his face red with rage. I simply smiled, a small, tired smile. "Go ahead. Call them. I will tell them I am evicting a non-tenant who has committed infidelity on my property, and they will tell you to gather your things and leave peacefully. You don't have a lease, you don't have your name on the deed, and you don't have a leg to stand on, Alex. I took your keys. You are trespassing. Get your bags, get in your car, and get off my property." He was defeated. The fight drained out of him, replaced by a sullen, toxic resentment. He stomped over to the curb, angrily kicking at the bags before picking up the duffel bag. He saw the Ziploc bag containing his keys and grabbed it. He didn't even notice the shredded tuxedo inside the house. He opened his car, tossed his bags in the trunk, and got into the driver's seat. Before pulling away, he looked at me one last time, a look of pure hatred on his face. "You'll regret this. You'll never find anyone as good as me," he hissed. I just waved. "Drive safely, Alex. Enjoy your future." And he peeled out of the driveway, tires squealing, disappearing from my life. The aftermath was exhausting, but I was prepared. I immediately called my lawyer, explaining the situation and sending over all the documentation, the house deed, the joint bank account transfer records, and a brief, written timeline of the events. She advised me to send him a certified letter outlining the termination of our relationship, the permanent eviction, and a clear statement that I would not be returning any of his contributions to the house, which she categorized as gifts made during the course of a relationship. It was harsh, but legally sound. I changed the security codes, blocked him on every form of social media and communication, and contacted his work to inform them that he was no longer to be contacted via my personal number or address. Sarah, his ex, also tried to contact me, sending a long, rambling text message about how it wasn't all his fault and how they were meant to be, attempting to justify their betrayal. I replied with a single word: blocked. I spent the next few weeks in a fog, cleaning his residual presence out of the house. I donated his remaining clothes, threw out his toothbrush, and repainted the wall he had so meticulously installed the sound system on. The silence in the house was no longer deafening, it was peaceful. I canceled the wedding venue, sent out terse, professional notices to all the vendors, and explained the situation to my parents and closest friends. They were all shocked, but unanimously supportive. My best friend, Maria, came over with wine and a sledgehammer, and we demolished the ugly, overly masculine workbench he had installed in the garage. It was wonderful. Alex tried to contact me multiple times over the next few months, always using different numbers, always claiming he just needed to talk about the bills, or get that one specific book. I forwarded every single communication to my lawyer, who sent him back a stern cease and desist letter. He never got another word out of me. The last I heard, he had moved in with Sarah, who had apparently quit her job to support him after his terrible ordeal. They were struggling financially, and his career had taken a hit because he had to relocate unexpectedly. It brought me a small, cold satisfaction to know that his comfort, his stability, and his life were completely upended because of his choices. I didn't seek revenge. I sought self-preservation, but the consequences of his actions were his to bear, and the universe delivered. The moral of the story, I suppose, is that the only person you can truly rely on is yourself. I was saved not by luck, but by my grandmother's wisdom and my own foresight in keeping my assets separate and secure. Never let the comfort of a relationship blind you to your own self-respect and legal standing. I lost a man I loved, but I kept my home, my sanity, and my self-worth. It was the hardest thing I've ever done, but kicking him out, literally and figuratively, was the single most empowering decision of my life. I am now rebuilding my future, and this time, the foundation is completely mine, and it is unshakable. If you made it this far, thank you for listening to my story and for letting me finally tell the full, unvarnished truth of how it all fell apart. Like this video if you were on my side and think I did the right thing by putting his bags on the curb. Subscribe for more stories like this, where trust is broken and lives are changed forever. And please, share your final thoughts on this whole mess in the comment section. Did I handle the climax right, or should I have done something different? Let me know. I'll see you all in the next story.